bad. They're becoming just like him. And so how do you undo that? How do you undo that reality? Because all of us here as parents, as teachers, as leaders, as pastors, we want better for those that we lead. We want better for our children. We want better for our congregation. We want better for our students and our children. How then do we allow them? How do we lead them to do what's better and be better than what we ourselves have been? And the answer actually is that we ourselves have to become that transformed person. No matter how much you say, don't be this way or don't do that way, those words become powerless unless we ourselves become that person that they need to be. So here, Jacob could say all he wants, don't be Jacob, don't be Jacob, don't be Jacob. It was irrelevant because they were becoming Jacobs. They were becoming deceivers, liars, and thieves. It's only when God was transforming Jacob's life to become like that Israel, that the hope of that transformation to be passed on to the children. As they themselves found themselves being that thief, being that liar, being that conners, being those things, the hope that they had that, man, this is not all that we can become, this is not all that our future holds for us. The hope of that was simply in the testimony of knowing that Jacob was no longer Jacob, that he was Israel. And the hope of your children, the hope of our students, the hope of my congregation, is not in me just saying good words or you saying good words or the right words. It's when we can also, through our lives, share the testimony of the transformational power of God's love, when we become transformed and set that example for those whom we are leading. Let me just close with this last thing very, very quickly because I have no time. And that's this. Jacob is being encouraged with these generational promises. If you read verses 11 to 12, these are the things that God says to Jacob. Not only the idea that he was transformed from being Jacob to Israel, but he tells him by himself, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation will come from you. Kings will be your descendants. The land that I have given to Abraham and Isaac, I now give unto you, and I will give that land to your descendants. These are all promises and blessings that were actually from previous stories in Genesis. I am God Almighty, something that God had spoken to Abraham. I am your God. I am the Lord Almighty. Right? So the same thing of I am your God, I am your Lord Almighty, that had been spoken unto Abraham was now been spoken unto Jacob. To be fruitful and multiply, something we know happens in the story of Adam, and then it happens again in Noah. It's being spoken now unto Jacob. A nation will come from you, something that was promised unto what? To Abraham. No longer will you just be Abram, a father, but you will become Abraham, because you will be a father of nations. The land, he says directly, the land I promised unto your father Isaac, the promise I gave to your grandfather Abraham, I give unto you, and now I'll give unto your descendants as well. And this is where I want to close. One of the things I find very, very, very interesting about Jewish culture is the idea of passing on a legacy to their descendants. And what I mean by that specifically is this. When I was speaking to a Jewish rabbi and